Well, if you've been to Disney World recently and you've ridden the monorail, it doesn't take you long to realize that they're not in the best shape in the world. They are constantly being cleaned and sort of, given a little bit of a makeover, but the trains themselves are very old. There have been incidents where parts of it have fallen off of the track even and almost struck guests in the theme park. And obviously, that's a major liability if you're talking about Disney World potentially hurting or worse for a guest in your park due to these older trains. I kind of wonder if Disney will actually replace these, and could we potentially look at a future where they actually get rid of the monorails? Now, I probably would have said years ago that they wouldn't do that, but if you've seen the recent changes they've done in the theme parks, removing Rivers of America and other aspects of the theme parks, I don't think it's out of the question. So we're going to read through here and give my thoughts on to maybe why they may not do this, or if they do this, how much it may cost them, as I did a little math here. So we'll just dig into this, have a little discussion about it. So hi, I'm Jared with Capture the Magic. And what made me think of this is an older article. We actually did a segment on our podcast about this last year, and I came across it, and I kind of had some different thoughts here. So this is from casino.org, and it's an article about the end of the line for the Las Vegas monorail. So this article is about how they're going to get rid of the monorail out there, and one of the reasons being is the expense of new trains and, upkeep and things like that. But in this article, they mention is Bombardier no longer makes the monorails. They have an issue here that one reason Vegas is getting rid of theirs is because of replacement parts and things. They say the monorail employs 9 model of trams, each with 4 cars, which its 4-mile track was custom designed to fit. Those trams were only manufactured by Bombardier out of Quebec, which no longer makes them. In fact, after racking up billions of dollars of debt, it no longer makes trams at all. Bombardier sold its rail business for $6.7 billion to French competitor Alstom in 2021. Alstom only manufactures a newer model whose beam width of 27.2 inches renders it incompatible with the 26-inch older model. And they say here, for a while, the monorail executives out in Las Vegas reportedly rooted for Disney World to upgrade its Mark 6 trams so they could buy the retired stock of them. Says the first monorail tracks to operate in Vegas, connecting the MGM Grand and the Baileys from 1995 to 2002, were 2 retired Disney World monorail trams. However, the Mouse House is in the same no-win situation as Las Vegas. It can buy an all-new monorail system, but would need to construct all new tracks. It's not impossible for a company to develop a new monorail to fit the existing one's tracks, but nobody is rushing to step up to that very niche plate. So given that, I did a little bit of research here. So if we look into, we don't really know how much the current trams at Disney World cost because Disney doesn't release that information. But if we look at the original Disney World monorail system, debuted in 1971, it cost approximately $3.5 million per mile to construct, and the total cost of the entire system, including both the monorail track and the trains, was around $23 million. This is what it cost then, not adjusting for inflation. So in 1970, each train cost between $1 to $1.2 million. In today's money, that would be about $9.5 million per train. In 1989, when 12 trains were purchased, if we account for inflation, the cost of that would have been $3.8 million roughly. So the total cost for the 14 trains would have been almost $54 million. And in today's numbers, to replace the current fleet of 12 trains would cost around $115 million. So we're looking at the tracks at Disney World. Disney World has 14.7 miles of monorail track, and going off the Las Vegas numbers, this operating cost annually is about $1.8 million. So then if we look into if they were to get new trains and replace the tracks here, it would cost around $28 million per mile. So if they were to do all 14.7 miles of that track, it would be almost $411 million, which means if Disney World had to construct all new monorail tracks and trains, the total cost would be around $525 million. Now, if we look at how much it cost in Build Galaxy's Edge, it was about $1 billion. Toy Story Land was about $200 to $300 million. That's a lot of money to put into something that doesn't give you a direct ROI, which is one reason why I sit there and look at this and I say, will Disney do this? So even if Disney were to be able to get these trains, they would either have to install new track or retrofit the monorail trains that they get to fit their existing track. I have no clue how much money that would be, but I would assume it would not be a cheap endeavor to retrofit those to their current track. So given that cost there, if you look at, let's just say they don't do trains and track, but they just do the trains, or they're looking at just doing the trains themselves. That's still $54 million ish they would need to spend on new monorail trains. They would have to have those retrofitted. So like I said, I have no clue how much that would cost, but let's just round that up to somewhere around $100 million, give or take. It's probably maybe less than that, but again, I don't know how much that would cost. Would Disney invest $100-ish million, a little bit less, into something that does not make them a direct ROI? Now, in current day Disney, much like the Rivers of America, one reason they want to replace those is because those do need to be fixed, and Disney basically looks at water as it doesn't make Disney money, so they would rather put an attraction in here that is a draw that would make them money. One would assume they're going to have to address this to either make fix them all up to where they work really well, but at some point in time, these are just not going to continue to work. Years ago, I would have said Disney would replace these because it's an iconic part of the Disney parks. It's got a lot of history, and it's something that people have, enjoyed. Plus, you have the monorail resorts that are around Magic Kingdom that rely on the monorail as a selling factor. Of one reason they can charge the high amounts that they charge to stay at these hotels is because of the monorail access to Magic Kingdom, because Magic Kingdom is not an easy theme park to get to. And if you stay on the monorail tracks, it's very easy to hop on there, get into the park, and it's much quicker, less of a headache, and all those things like that. But I kind of lean toward Disney not doing this, but it does bring up a whole other issue of potential problems, which would be if they don't want to spend the money to replace the monorails on the monorail track, what do they replace it with? Because again, you have those hotels around there that are basically like built up around these tracks. I don't know if this is something that would come up anytime in the next 5 years, 10 years. I don't know the lifespan of these monorails. Obviously, Las Vegas wanted these monorails, so they were going to use them. But again, the upkeep on these is very expensive. And I don't think things are off limits on Disney World property like I think they used to be. And I really do wonder what they end up doing with this, because if they get rid of the monorails at some point, how does that go over with people? If they replace it with the Skyliner, or do they just get rid of it entirely and rely on bus transportation? Now, if it's going to end up being a price tag of $500 million plus to replace the monorails, I have a very hard time believing that Disney would do that. In modern day Disney, I mean, they're talking about all the things they're bringing to the parks, but a lot of these are replacing areas in which many people are upset by the things that they're replacing, one of which being the Rivers of America, which is, again, something that one reason Disney is going to replace this, and many people are justifying it, is because, well, it doesn't draw anybody in. It doesn't, people don't go there to ride rides. You're putting in an attraction here that is going to make them money. I think that's what Disney's looking at. So then the question would come into, would they spend $500+ million to replace a transportation method that doesn't have a direct ROI? I honestly don't think that they will. And I think the timeline for the monorails at some point is going to come up when they either have to be replaced or they get rid of it, which brings up a whole other slew of issues, because you have the monorail resorts that are connected to those. You have the monorail track that goes into Epcot. What do they do with those? No, I suppose there is a scenario where they are able to get those monorail trams, somehow make them work with the existing track. So if they're able to do that, you're probably still talking about a price tag of somewhere around $100 million if that includes the trams and somehow, engineering to make them fit this track. And again, you're talking about it's probably much cheaper to do buses. And if they want to do a Skyliner system, we don't know the exact numbers on the Skyliner system because Disney never announced those. But if you look at similar systems that were built, if you look at the current Skyliner track, it would probably cost them roughly $100 and some odd million to build that. I could see them potentially replacing the monorails with the Skyliner track, but I guess then you would have to change up all the monorail resorts. I think if they keep the monorails or they get rid of them and replace them with something else, they're looking at a pretty hefty price tag for this. But I suppose one scenario would be they just get rid of the monorails completely, get rid of the track, get rid of the access of the resorts around the monorail, and just rely on bus transportation. And I guess some of the resorts have the boat transportation. I think that could be a route that they go, because, again, I think 10 years ago, Disney would have replaced these. Again, they almost looked like they were going to in 2018. Now, like I said, at one point, Disney legend Bob Gurr had said Disney is working on a contract for new monorail cars. This was before COVID. This was around 2018. This is April 29th, 2018. And it says this was April 28th of that year that Celebration Town Hall hosted working with Walt Disney in an evening with Disney legend Bob Gurr. And there was a question and answer session part of it. It says, last night, Gurr addressed the rumors and speculation that Disney would be purchasing new monorail cars for Walt Disney World. Gurr no longer works for the Walt Disney World Company, so his intel is not an official confirmation. That being said, Gurr believes the contract for the new monorails is already underway. Gurr also said, you will see new monorails if everything works right. It will be the same company at Bombardier. They also had, around this same time period, announced that that theater that was going to be coming to Magic Kingdom, they had actually broken ground on that, and then it was abruptly stopped, and they never mentioned it again. With their recent investments more into the cruise lines, what they're currently building in the theme parks, or they're going to be building in the theme parks the next 10 years, I don't see Disney spending that much money on a system that doesn't make them money. So I think we could be looking at a potential situation with Disney World where the monorail system is no longer a thing. I think it's a very possible scenario we're looking at. Obviously, who knows? And they could come up with a solution here. And I think this is something they've been putting off for a long period of time because of that price tag of how much it would cost to do this. And I think you can only get by doing this for so long. And, you know, I guess the question would be, if they get rid of the monorails, does it hurt Disney? And I think that's the question they may be asking themselves, is how much would it hurt them if they didn't have the monorails? Obviously, fans of Disney World and the monorail system would be very upset by this, but you're like everyday guests, like how much are the monorails synonymous with Disney now? I think it probably was more back in the day. I think that if they were to do it, it wouldn't surprise me anymore. I think it would have years ago, but nowadays it would not have. And if they do bring it back, do they charge for it? I mean, Disney has already charged for fast passes. If they do foot the bill for this and they replace the monorails and the track, do they do it still as just a part of the transportation method about getting around the parks? Or do they charge for it, or charge an upcharge if you're staying in the hotels, or if you're not charged if you stay in the hotels, but if you're not staying in the hotels, you know, you have to pay an extra fee. You know, it's definitely possible, but it does make me think within the next 10 to 20 years, we could see the end of the monorail as we know it at Disney World, as we've already seen this happening in Vegas here, as they're getting rid of their monorail system for many similar reasons that Disney would be doing as well, which is the maintenance cost of these, and also the inability to get new trains that would fit their existing track here. Who knows what they do, but I just want to make a video on this because I think it's interesting and just definitely looking more toward the future on this, which is what I kind of tend to do. But we'll have to wait and see what Disney does with this. But either way, that's going to be it though for this video. If you like this video, please like it and subscribe to the channel, as we do lots of coverage here of Universal Studios, Epic Universe, Disney World, and pop culture. And let us know in the comments, do you think that Disney World will replace the monorails, or do you think that eventually they will get rid of them? And until next time, we will see you in the parks.